And finally, last but not least, what happens whenever we have these different memories of the past in a certain community, whether it's a town or a nation? What happens whenever these different accounts kind of come out into the public to be seen or to be told? And the most, the typical way in which communities, and by communities I can mean locations, but I can also mean groups, the most typical way in which communities try to present their history to the rest of the world publicly is through the use of historic sites or monuments, things that are meant to memorialize or commemorate or celebrate certain aspects of a group's history. Now, this is where controversy takes place. And again, we talk about this more in my public history class, where public historians, of which oral history is a subset, public historians are kind of in the crossfire of these events because public historians are out there in the community trying to tell stories. And sometimes those stories are going to conflict with each other. So, whenever I talk about the idea of these competing histories, some good examples of this and how they kind of come to the forefront, and you see as an audience how these histories kind of combat each other. You see that most typically nowadays in terms of monuments, specifically Civil War monuments. So that's a huge issue now, right? We all know this, especially in the South, the idea of monuments and new voices that are being heard challenging the old stories, the old memories. These new memories that were not always known are coming to the forefront, and now these two ideas of the past from two different groups are coming to conflict. So that's why you have controversy over things like Confederate memorials. If you look at the Vietnam Memorial, which is another very popular memorial in Washington, D.C., maybe you've seen it, maybe you know of it. It is actually, whenever it was first presented anyway, had a lot of controversy surrounding it. People saw that memorial, and there were two groups almost immediately split. Some loved it, and some hated it. Some loved it because it was something different, it was abstract, it was meant to kind of like evoke a certain sense of awe and sadness for the Vietnam War and the people who died, the veterans who died in it, the soldiers who died in it. That was the group that liked the monument. The group that disliked the monument, that really hated the monument, was that they didn't see it as a war to commemorate. They saw it as a monument to commemorate the war. They saw it as a monument to shame from the war. It didn't look like older monuments where you have gallant soldiers and bronze statues, raising flags or looking strong out in the distance, that kind of stuff. It was more, again, of an abstract piece. And what they saw from their perspective, those who hated the monument, was a monument to defeat, a monument to death, essentially, to a certain degree. Now, the other ideas won out over time. People see the Vietnam Memorial now as something, beautiful, something poignant. But even that actual monument had a lot of controversy going on because two different groups remembered the Vietnam War, or even more importantly, wanted to remember the Vietnam War in different ways. Another example of this and how memory kind of conflicts with history in the public sphere is, I use this in my other class, the idea of the Enola Gay exhibit from the Smithsonian Institute. In around 1995, this took place. And if you're not familiar with the Enola Gay, it's the B-29, the super fortress that dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And the Smithsonian is going to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II by having this huge exhibit with the Enola Gay, at least the fuselage of the Enola Gay, as its primary centerpiece of its exhibit. Now, what happened was that the Smithsonian had one view of the past of World War II that it wanted to show the public, but veterans associations, vets of World War II, had a different idea. And whenever vets of World War II saw what the Smithsonian was going to do, they were up in arms over it. The Smithsonian was going to tell a complete story, especially of the bombing of Hiroshima. It was going to not just talk about the building of the bomb, dropping the bomb, but it was also going to talk about the after effects of the bomb and how it basically destroyed the city of Hiroshima and how the horrific effects of the bomb on Japanese civilians. Well, that, of course, upset World War II vets. It's the 50th anniversary of the war ending. These guys, deserve to be celebrated for winning the war, for ending the war, for making the world safe for democracy, basically. And so they said, no, we don't want you to show and exhibit to the public where it talks about the atrocities of war necessarily. We want this to be more of a celebration for the veterans, more of a positive aspect, positive portrayal of the war for the veterans. So there was a big dust up over that in the mid 90s. So this shows you how memory and history, especially whenever two groups with different ideas of the past come to the public to share those memories of the past, how they can come into conflict. And it's all around us even today. You guys, are all aware of these issues taking place. But again, the idea here is to show that how memory and different memories and the issues that can affect memory are going to play a role in your oral histories, either consciously or subconsciously. All these issues are going to be there when it's all said and done.